we're going to do the Unit 2 Quadratics Review. Okay, so if we're going to do Unit 2 Quadratics Review, here's some of the things you need to know. Now you have pretty much all of this in your notes. First thing I want to go over is if you had to solve something by factoring. And I know that PhotoMath will do it. Don't use PhotoMath. Because I am adjusting the problem so that on the quiz, that on the test, so that PhotoMath won't help you. So don't use it. So here's the idea that I'm looking at is let's say I gave you a problem like this, and it was solve something like x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. I know PhotoMath will look like that. Will solve that, and I know you can do that, but it won't look like that on the quiz. It will look like this. It'll be something else in there. It'll be a Greek letter, maybe a Greek letter theta squared plus 5 theta plus 6 equals 0. And if you solve it, it's the same thing. It's just a name. You could put the word mom in there. Mom squared plus 5 mom plus 6 equals 0. It wouldn't matter. You still solve it the same way. If I'm doing this, I know that some of you use the box method, but I look at this and I say, I need two numbers that multiply to get 6, but add to get 5. And so what works to get 6? 3 times 2 gets you 6, and 3 plus 2 gets you 5. So if we factor this first, we would write this as theta plus 3 times theta plus 2 equals 0. That means theta equals -3 or -2. And that's how you'd solve it. So just know that that's kind of what I'm going to expect of you on the test or on the quiz, because I know that some of you think that PhotoMath is like your saving grace, but PhotoMath just turns you into a data entry person, and that won't do it for you. So just know that I won't be using X in those. I'll be using some other Greek letter. The other thing that you need to know is if you got 3 forms that you're looking at. The first one is standard form. Standard form of a parabola looks like this. And you get some specific information. From this. So some of the main specific things you get is C is the y-intercept. It's where the graph crosses the y-axis. So when you think about it, the point 0, C is on the graph. So know that that's on the graph. A couple other things that you get on this from standard form. You get that the vertex, and remember that is the tip of the graph. Okay, so the vertex is the tip of the graph. The vertex is found by x is equal to the opposite of b divided by 2a. Once you get this value, put this into the equation to find the y value. Know that the axis of symmetry, on a graph, and remember that's the part that splits the parabola in half. Okay, that's the part that splits the parabola in half, is also x is equal to the opposite of b divided by 2a. That's what you get from standard form. So those are the things you get from standard form. Okay, you get the intercept, the y-intercept. You can figure out what the tip of the vertex is, and you can find out the vertex. You also get the axis of symmetry, where the parabola splits in half. Okay, so another form that we have is vertex form. So remember, the vertex is the tip of the parabola. Vertex form looks like this. And in vertex form, the vertex on this is h comma k. That's the tip of the parabola. It gives you the tip of the parabola. It's really handy when you're trying to figure out where this graph is changing, what the maximum is, what the minimum of the graph is. We'll kind of go over those in a second. What the tip of the parabola is, and which side it's increasing or decreasing, or something like that. The final form that we've had is intercept form. That's the x-intercepts. That's the factored form. So it might be called the intercept form, which is referring to the x-intercepts. It might be called factored form. But that form looks like this. And what that form gives you is it gives you that the x-intercepts, remember that's where the graph crosses the x-axis. Those values are x is equal to m and x is equal to n. So they're points m comma 0 and n comma 0. So when you're asked to figure out what it looks like, then know that that's true. Now we got to talk about what these parabolas look like and what they might give you. So you're going to have a parabola maybe that looks like this. And there may be some axes in there. So let me draw some kind of an axis in here. Draw that and I'll draw that. And so if I'm looking at the parts of this parabola, the things that really matter, okay, this is what the parabola looks like if that value A is positive. Remember, back in all of these forms, value A shows up in every one of these forms. And if that value is positive, it kind of allows you to kind of realize how this graph looks. So if A is positive, this is what the graph is going to look like. This right here, that is the y-intercept. That's what you get from standard form. The value down here, this value and this value, those two values are the x-intercepts. Okay, you're going to get that from intercept form or factored form. Notice that this piece right here, that is the vertex. Okay, so that's the vertex. So that's if A is positive. Now, if A is negative, the only thing that happens is the parabola will flip over. So if I draw some more axes, and I'll flip the parabola over. So if I flip the parabola over, something like this, this is the graph if that A value is negative. It doesn't change all the pieces. Notice this is still the vertex. Okay, that's still the vertex. This value right here is still the y-intercept. This value right here and this value right here, and this value right here, those are still the x-intercepts. So those don't change. So if we're, and I'll do a couple problems on the Delta Math assignment, but those are, that's what you're going to be looking at. Now, you can kind of look at, get a little bit more from this. If we draw a couple of graphs here, and I draw a parabola that looks like this, notice that from this tip going this way, the graph is increasing. Notice on this side, the graph is decreasing. Because if you look here, the going down here, the graph is decreasing. And if you look over here, the graph is increasing. Similarly, if you flip this parabola around, so if I draw a parabola where the A value is negative, and I draw it something like this, notice that in that case, all the way up to this vertex, here the graph is increasing, and here the graph is decreasing. Anytime something is referencing positive or negative, on the graph, that's referring to, is it above or below the x-axis. Okay, so that's what that's referring to. Positive or negative, meaning is it positive y values or negative y values. So let me do a couple of these problems. One more thing before I do a couple of these problems is I may end up having you solve something like this. Solve, and I'll use the this Greek letter delta plus 3 squared minus 2 is equal to, let's do 23. Okay, so if I solve this, I would add 2 to both sides. If I add 2 to this side, I add 2 to this side, I'd have delta plus 3 squared is equal to 25. Now, the next thing I do is I take the square root of both sides. So here's where I split this thing into 2 different things. I get delta plus 3 has to equal the square root of 25, and delta plus 3 has to equal negative square root of 25. Because what I'm doing is I'm taking the square root of this side, and I'm taking the square root of this side, but I have to do the positive and the negative. So if I can continue to solve this, I have delta plus 3 is equal to 5, or delta plus 3 is equal to negative 5. So if I can continue to solve it, my final answers, I even wrote x there, but it's really delta is equal to 2 if I subtract 3 from both sides, or delta is equal to negative 8 if I subtract 3 from both sides. So that's another kind of problem you're going to have to do. You'll get practice on that in the assignment for today. So let me go to a problem like this one, quadratic word problems. Now I look at this and I go, holy cow, that's a lot, right? I look at that and go, okay, a company is selling widgets. The profit Y is made by the company is related to the selling price of each widget. Use this equation to find the maximum profit. Well, this is a parabola that opens down. Notice that it opens down because there's a negative 12 there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Desmos. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to a graphing calculator. And I'm just going to type this equation in. I'm going to type y equals, and then I'm going to go back here and figure out what it is. Negative 12x squared. Type it negative 12x to the second. And then what else do I have here? Plus 718x. So plus 718x. Finally, minus 5,419. Minus 5,419. And what I get is I don't get really anything. But if I start zooming out, what I'll get is I'll get a picture of this parabola. And I'm looking for that maximum value. And I can start moving this around and I can start dragging this up. I know that that maximum is somewhere way up here. Well, if I go all the way up to the tippy top of this parabola, is I get that value right there. Notice it clicks on it, you click on it and you get the tippy top value. So 5,321 widgets. So if I go here to here, my profit is 5,321. And that should be the right answer. And sure enough, that's my picture. So I can use Desmos to get me there. Okay, pause that or go back and let's see what I did on that. So let me go back and let me do one of these where I select the form of the quadratic. Okay, find all the intervals where f is negative. Well, if I'm trying to figure out when f of x, or that's a y value, is negative, I would love to know where those roots are. where does that thing cross the x-axis? If I want to know where the graph crosses the x-axis, I want it in factored form. Now I know that this graph crosses the x-axis at -7 and -3. I know that this graph opens up. So I know that if I were going to draw this graph, okay, if I were going to draw this graph, I got this thing, let me bring this down. I got a parabola, like something like this. I don't really even know where it necessarily goes, but I do know that this value, let me draw this, is -7. And I know this value right here is -3 because of my intercepts. Notice my intercept is my x-intercept is -7 and x is -3. So if I have that, I know that based on this, this is all the spot where f of x or y is negative, in between -7 and -3. So I'm just going to go, okay, well, if I make my thing go between -7 and -3, if I have an interval in between there, I should get a picture that looks like what I was thinking it should be looking like. Let me do a new problem. Quadratic is hidden. You must find the maximum value. Choose the form of the quadratic that you would like to see. Well, if I need to find the maximum, remember that maximum value is the vertex. So I need my thing in vertex form. Now my vertex is 3, 8. So my maximum value is 8, because that's the highest value. That's my highest y value, because I know that if I graph this parabola, that I'm given here, this parabola is going to look something like this, where this point right there is 3, 8. That is my vertex. So 8 must be my answer, and sure enough, there it is. So go ahead and try some of those problems on this Delta Math assignment. I think if you can do these problems and you make good notes, you're going to be really good for the exam, for the quiz that you have on Friday. Good luck, and I will talk to you soon.